There are lots of terrifying Bigfoot and Dogman encounter stories out there. And Lord knows I never want to be in their shoes. But every now and then, a story comes along that is so much more than just a fleeting encounter. This is one of those stories. The poster didn't want to share his name, so we're going to call him Jordan. Welcome to the In-Between. I'm Carol Ann, and this is Jordan's story. The place and time is Colorado in the early 90s. Jordan is a teenager and is having a pretty tough time. He lost his dad when he was just a kid, which understandably rocked him pretty hard. And now finds himself lost in the quicksand of anxiety and depression. He starts spending more and more time alone, resisting attempts by his family and friends to help him. At first, that meant just spending a lot of time alone in his room. But then he starts taking long walks in the woods. His family thinks, well, maybe this is just what he needs to do to start healing. So they give him his space and even encourage it. Jordan's long walks turn into camping overnight alone in the woods, then 2 nights, and then longer. He starts collecting outdoor survival equipment, making his time in the woods much more enjoyable. He works all week long in his grandfather's garage, but come Friday at 5, the car is already packed and he is gone. His grandfather comes with him every now and then, but he knows Jordan prefers to be on his own. And as Jordan starts spending more and more time in the woods alone, his family starts to come to terms with this new, quieter, more solemn version of him, while mourning the loss of the energetic, outgoing kid he used to be. And Jordan gets pretty comfortable on his own out in the woods and has a particular spot that he goes to all the time. It's his perfect spot. All he has to do is drive up an old abandoned service road, park his truck, and hike a couple of miles into the woods. But that's enough to take him from civilization to his own private world, right on the bank of an amazing creek full of big, gorgeous brown trout, Jordan's favorite. Brown trout is his grandfather's favorite fish too, which is why Jordan eventually gives in and lets his grandfather in on his secret place. And he's fine with sharing his hidden retreat with Grandpa because Grandpa has an uncanny ability to read Jordan like no one else does. If Jordan isn't in the mood for company, Grandpa can sense it and just waits for another weekend. Which makes the disappointment Jordan feels so much deeper when he finds out that Grandpa told an old friend of Jordan's how to find him. Jordan is sitting at his fire, cooking the brown trout he had just caught for dinner with a side of wild rice, his all-time favorite meal. When he hears footsteps in the woods, Jordan freezes and just listens.
Jordan?
Jordan calls back with a mixture of curiosity and caution.
Yeah, I'm over here.
He waits and listens as the footsteps get closer and closer until into his campsite walks Jordan's childhood best friend and 2 girls. We'll call them Jack, Janet, and Chrissy. Jordan has never met the girls before, and as for Jack, he moved away right before Jordan's dad died in the 7th grade. As far as he's concerned, they're now total strangers, and he makes a mental note to think twice before telling Grandpa any more of his secrets. But Jordan's shocked and amused to see his long-lost friend walk out of the woods and freely returns the hug that Jack offers. Jack makes introductions all around and then proceeds to pass out beers and bark orders at the girls on where to put up the tents. Now, when Jordan first got there, he thought he had all the time in the world, so he just dumped his gear, grabbed his fishing pole, and headed for the river, a decision he now regrets as he watches the girls set up their tent right where he always put his own. Oh well, Rain's not in the forecast, so Jordan just resigns himself to sleeping under the stars next to the fire. And it doesn't take long to figure out that his peace and quiet is definitely not going to be respected. Jack is acting like the hero whose mere presence is going to change the sad trajectory of Jordan's life. He lets it slip that one of Jordan's family members had contacted his parents after Jordan's dad died, hoping he could get Jack to cheer Jordan up by calling him. Then he opens his arms for a hug, saying, "I'm here for you, buddy." And despite trying his hardest, Jordan can't stop the laugh that escapes him and says, "Dude, it's been like 10 years. You're a little late, don't you think?" Jack's girlfriend stands by her man with an indignant, "Geez, have a little decency. He's here now. That's what matters." Jordan is pissed, but decides to just keep quiet, sit here by the fire, and wait for them to either pass out or go to bed, whichever comes first. Then he'll gather up the few things he had unpacked, walk back to his truck, and decide then what to do. It's almost a full moon out, so he'll be able to see his way just fine. It doesn't take long for Jordan's visitors, invaders, to go to bed, and he is outie. He gathers his stuff and starts hiking back to his truck. He has to use his flashlight after all because some of the woods are too thick to see by moonlight. He's only walking for about 10 minutes when he hears trees smashing from behind him. Fear starts to rise in Jordan's chest. If it were daytime, he would just assume that there's some logging going on in the area, but not at 1 a.m. He starts walking faster. Now he hears grunting and stomping, so he thinks has to be a big bear, and that fear in his chest now consumes his entire body. He starts to run, and whatever it is decides to run after him. Unfortunately for Jordan, he's still pretty far from his truck, so he starts looking around for someplace to hide and thanks the universe when he sees a fallen tree that isn't lying flat on the forest floor. There's at least a foot of space underneath with piles of dead leaves all around. Jordan dives under that tree and covers himself with the piles of leaves. Holding his breath, he listens as the large creature continues to run right at him. Within seconds, it jumps onto the tree under which Jordan is hiding, then uses it as a springboard, launching itself forward and continues on, presumably still chasing after Jordan. Jordan keeps listening as the sounds of the creature's pursuit get quieter and quieter until the woods are again silent. He lets out the breath he didn't even know he was holding, and after taking a few minutes to collect himself, he turns his flashlight back on to get a better look at this space that just saved his life. Much to his surprise, it's actually kind of cozy in there. And since the idea of going back out into the dark woods is not the most appealing to him at the moment, Jordan decides to stay right there until morning. The sound of monkeys playing wakes him up. Opening his eyes and looking around, Jordan realizes he's in some sort of den where the dirt has been dug out from under this huge log, and a few dead pine branches scattered around give the dirt a little cushion. He can't quite sit up, but he still finds it kind of cozy in that kid fort kind of way. He hears that monkey sound again and follows the sound to one end of the log where there's a small area where he can see out. The tree is at the edge of a small cliff with the end overlooking what looks to be a dried up creek bed about 15 or 20 feet below him. Across the creek bed on the other side, Jordan can see a large area either dug out or washed out by the creek. I mean, if you're standing on that bank on the other side, you'd never guess that you're standing right over a carved out cave. And you probably also would never guess that the carved out cave is the home to 4 giant monkey-looking creatures. 2 females, a young male, and a larger male. Jordan can't take his eyes off them, wondering what in God's name he's looking at. He watches as they communicate in their own language, squealing and hooting at each other. Then the name Bigfoot comes to him. He doesn't know anything about Bigfoot, but if these things are big feet, he certainly wants to learn more. Jordan watches as they settle down, with the last female covering the cave's entrance with broken branches. A few minutes later, he decides it's time to get back to his truck. He crawls out from under the log and carefully covers the opening of his new dugout tree hideout, not wanting anyone or anything to discover his new hiding spot. He looks at his compass and makes a mental note of his surroundings to make sure he can find his way back, because he is definitely coming back here again. When Jordan finally gets back to his truck, he's surprised to see Jack waiting for him. Jack has a lot to say about Jordan's rude behavior and goes on about how he went out of his way to find Jordan in his hour of need. Jordan just shakes his head, saying he doesn't know why Jack thinks he's in his hour of need, but if he were, Jack would be the last person he'd reach out to. And he gets in his truck and drives away. Once home, Jordan calls his grandfather, who asks if Jordan likes the surprise. Let's just say that Grandpa has a new appreciation of how much Jordan values his privacy. And Jordan returns the very next weekend, eager to make sure that Jack, Janet, and Chrissy are gone, and to check in on his new monkey friends. Finding his campsite littered with broken beer bottles and garbage, Jordan cleans up, sets up his tent, and then heads out in search of his tree. After only hiking about 10 minutes from his campsite, he finds the log. Interestingly enough, Jordan realizes as he's standing next to the log that the thick brush on this side of the creek bank obscures the view through to the other side. But if you climb under the tree and all the way to the end, the dirt has fallen away from a small opening, offering the only view across the creek bed. Jordan climbs under the log and shimmies his way to the lookout spot. He looks out and sees the opening to the carved-out cave across the creek is covered in dead branches. He lies there for a bit, just watching, waiting for something to move, when he's startled by a dead deer suddenly dropping in front of the cave opening. The big male creature jumps down next to the deer with a loud thump, pushing the branches aside. Quiet squeals and gibberish talk ensue as they start dismantling the deer limb by limb, feasting on their breakfast. Jordan is completely fascinated and totally misses the fact that it's starting to get dark. And what does get his attention is when the creatures start walking in his direction and climbing the bank right below him, prompting his hasty retreat to his campsite. But that's okay. At this point, Jordan is hooked and knows he'll be back to see them again as often as life will allow. Little does he know that this experience marks the beginning of several months of watching these creatures and getting to know this little Bigfoot family. Every now and then, Jordan wonders what had chased him that first night. Was it one of the Bigfoots he's been watching? Was it a different Bigfoot? Of course, there's no way to know. Until the night that would change everything, forcing him to say goodbye to his Bigfoot family and ending this current chapter of his life with an exclamation point. It's a typical Friday afternoon. Jordan heads out to his campsite right after work and gets to his tree fort lookout at his usual 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometimes the creatures are already awake, but usually not. He watches them wake up and get ready to hunt or do whatever it is they're going to do that day. As Jordan spies on the creatures waiting for them to wake up, something else on the opposite creek bank catches his eye and makes him look up. And what he sees changes him far more than anything else has so far. Standing on the edge of the cliff across the creek bed are 2 wolves. One is on all fours, looking down over the bank toward the lair of the 4 Bigfoots, while the other stands upright like a human, holding onto a tree as it looks down over the edge. Both wolves have gray and black fur with white streaks and dark eyes, and Jordan is startled by the realization that they are stalking his Bigfoot family. And these things are at least as big as the Bigfoots. At that moment, Jordan wishes he had a gun, but he doesn't. And the fear he feels for the Bigfoot creatures suddenly shifts in his head towards himself. He realizes this is a potentially bad situation and decides it's better to be at his campsite sooner rather than later. So he heads back. That night, long after Jordan goes to bed, he's awakened by screams so loud and terrifying that he covers his ears and rolls into a ball. Then the roaring and screeching begin, constant and terrifying, punctuated by ape-like screams. It sounds like a complete massacre. Jordan can tell that some of the sounds are coming from higher up, like in the trees, and some are lower to the ground. Occasionally, the screams come from trees that are a little too close to his campsite for comfort. He mentally berates himself for not leaving before. Something inside of him knew all hell was about to break loose. He should have left when he had the chance. But then he thinks it's a little late for that now. The battle rages for hours, and Jordan doesn't leave his tent or even make a sound for fear that his presence might be detected. And he now knows without a doubt that it was a dogman that was chasing him that first night. These things are ruthless killers capable of easily taking a human life. By sunrise, the war is over. And before sleep can overtake him, Jordan forces himself to get up and pack up his campsite. He is way too scared to spend another night. But before he leaves, he gathers the courage to go back to the tree to survey the aftermath. Crawling into his usual observation spot, Jordan barely recognizes the landscape in front of him. Tree limbs are scattered everywhere, with occasional spots of blood and clumps of hair, although far less than the bloodbath he was expecting. The beach is wrecked, with spots where footprints slide backwards into mounds. An honest-to-God clash of the titans. Jordan lets out a sigh of relief, thankful that he doesn't see any dead bodies. After a few minutes of quiet, taking in what he assumes is the either literal or figurative loss of his Bigfoot family, Jordan starts to leave, but is frozen by an unmistakable growl. He stops and listens, but the growling stops too. He turns to look out his peephole towards the spot on the upper bank where he first saw the dogman, and Jordan sees it. He sees the dogman sitting on the lowest tree branch. It's crouched down, sitting on its heels, steadying itself by holding onto the tree trunk, and appears to be looking directly at Jordan, like it knows he's there. It stands up on 2 feet, stretches, and jumps down, landing in a crouching position on 2 feet before falling forward and pushing off, landing on its hands. It takes off on all fours into the thick woods. Jordan, not wasting any time, wiggles out of his tree den and runs for his truck. In the month or so that follows, he actually comes back, always well armed, once a week or so, just to check on the area, hoping for some sign of the return of his Bigfoot family, until what would become his last visit. Jordan finds his hollow tree den destroyed, convincing him it's time to stop. Between that crystal clear hint and the approaching winter, he decides it's time to be done. At least here, at least for a while. That Thanksgiving, he tries to open back up to his family and shares his story with them, only to get laughs and ridicule in return. But it doesn't matter. Jordan knows in his heart and soul that this happened. He also knows that life isn't fair and can take away many things, like it took away his dad, but nothing can take away his treasured memories of his Bigfoot family. What a great story, with about 18 different valuable life lessons thrown in for good measure. I am glad that Jordan lived to tell the tale, but I think I will just stay right where I am and experience these creatures vicariously through him. And if you're an armchair cryptid hunter like me and would like to continue the adventure, click right here. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.